What's up, guys? So today I'm going to be working on something a little different than what I've done on my channel so far. I'm going to be working on fixing up this Gameboy Advance SP. So why am I working on this? So one of my nephew's birthdays is coming up, and this actually was my brother's Gameboy Advance SP from when he was a kid. So I thought it would be cool to go ahead and fix this up for his son. I thought it'd be like a cool sentimental gift, and a gift that actually has some meaning to it instead of just, you know, giving him a card with 50 bucks in it or whatever. So a little bit of the backstory behind this Game Boy is when I was growing up, my mom lived right next to the creek, and it would be very often, at least once every couple years, that we would get bad flooding, and it would be so bad to the point where we had to evacuate the house. And you know, with that, a lot of your belongings would end up getting ruined, and our Game Boys, so this, like his, I had one back in the day that was just blue or something, and our Game Boys actually ended up getting some water damage in one of those floods. I believe mine was so bad that I just had to chuck it out. But a couple of years ago, my mom was going through stuff and throwing things out, and she came across this at my Game Boy. But like I said, mine was too water damaged. I just had to throw it away. But my brother's, I actually ended up pulling apart. It had a little bit of water in it, but I just took it apart, cleaned it up, and threw a new battery in it, and it fired right up. I can throw the battery in here, show you guys. So new battery's in there, and she fires up. So yeah, I just wanted to throw a new battery in there, make a couple improvements. And what I mean by that is I ended up buying this ROM cart. Now, if you don't know what this is, it basically has a little board in there, and it has a slot for a micro SD card, if I can get it out of there. So you can just load, you know, as many ROMs as you can fit on there. I think it's a 2 gigabyte. Yeah, it's a 2 gigabyte card. So as many ROMs as you can fit on a 2 gigabyte card. And it comes with a little like custom firmware on there. So you can mess with like your real world time and all that shit if you want to, like, you're playing Pokemon and you want to hatch eggs faster, or, you know, whatever. But so a lot of cool little features on this thing. It was like 20 or 30 bucks on Amazon, so that's a win. But when I was actually testing the Game Boy out a little bit, I noticed that the D-pad, the up on the D-pad and the left on the D-pad, they work, but you just have to press them really hard. So what I'm going to be doing today is actually replacing the tactile buttons that sit under that D-pad, which are these little guys here. So basically that's just a little metal, I think it's metal that they have in there, button, and that basically is going to get soldered to the motherboard of the Game Boy Advance SP, and that should fix the problems that we're having with clicking the D-pad down and, you know, it not registering until you really smash it down. So I'm gonna get started on that. All right, so before we get into tearing this thing apart, I just want to kind of run over all the tools I've laid out here. I guess I just want to preface by saying I'm by no means an expert at soldering or electronics or anything like that. It's just something I enjoy doing as a hobby. So yeah. So I'm just going to run through the tools we have out here. So I have a basic soldering hot air station, whatever you want to call it. Nothing fancy. It was like something I picked up off Amazon a couple of years ago. A solder sucker, an old toothbrush in case we have to clean, some tweezers. The components are pretty small, so we'll probably need those. I have a air filter little fan thing here. It's good to have when you're soldering, especially if you're soldering with lead solder, which is what we have here. That stuff can be pretty toxic, and we just want to try to avoid as much of that as possible. I have soldering wick. have some flux, some 90% isopropyl alcohol, a little tool bit set here. Just has a good variety of bits that you come across when you're dealing with electronics. Just some Q-tips for cleaning, and then our tactile buttons that we're going to be replacing here. So we can get started now. I'll just start taking this thing apart and go from there. So Gameboy Advance SPs are pretty simple to take apart. You're just gonna have 4 screws right in the corner. They're this like triangle bit. Let me see if I can get one out here. It's like a triangle bit that you'll use to take those apart. The 4 screws are on the perimeter, and then you have 1 screw here, and then you have 1 screw down here. What's up, brother? All right, my dog Leo popped his head in there, so I had to say hello to him. But I'm just gonna start taking this Game Boy apart. I'll just speed it up so you don't have to watch, me slowly take screws out of the thing. So. All right, now we should be able to just pull that back cover off like that. Set that to the side, and now we have access to the board here. So on the board, we're just going to have 3 screws that hold that to the other half of the shell. Got 1 there, 1 here, and 1 here. So I'm just gonna pop those out quick. Those are just a regular Phillips head. All right, now we got the board detached from the other half of the shell. Just gotta be careful because the screen ribbon is still attached. We're just gonna flip that up like so. And we're gonna detach the screen ribbon here. Now it has a little ledge you can push down on each side. A little clip, whatever you wanna call it, and that should allow you to pull the ribbon free. And now we have the board all by itself. So we're just gonna set this half of the shell aside. Got to be careful because you have the back of the button soft covers here. You just want to make sure not to lose those. All right, guys, I'm not gonna lie to you. I am kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. I didn't really look into how to remove these buttons too much. So the first one I just kind of tinkered around with off camera to try to figure it out. But actually what I ended up doing was just using my soldering iron with a super fine tipped point there, and I used plenty of flux. And so I found at first I was trying to just hold the board with one hand, use the tweezers, use the soldering iron at the same time, and that wasn't really working out great. So I got out my helping hand and I just threw the board in there, and that way I was able to go to each of the 4 corners here, and I was just essentially like applying up pressure with the tweezers as I was hitting the iron on the contact point with the prong and the pad, and that seemed to work pretty well. I was thinking about using my hot air gun, but I figured there's a lot going on here. There's 4 of these buttons in the same little area, and I believe on the back of the board there is a lot of components in that same area. Yeah, it's very busy right in here, and so I was kind of worried if I were to use the hot air and I would heat that whole area up, if I would cause some of these other components to come undone from the board. So that's why I opted to just do the soldering iron method. It seemed to work pretty good. That way I'm able to kind of use pinpoint precision on the areas that I'm applying the heat. And yeah, so I'm just gonna run through and get at this second button now. And once I get that popped off, we'll just have to clean these pads up, clean the old solder off, re-tin them, and then it should essentially be the same process going back on. It'll just be holding that button in place and then going around to the 4 corners and touching the soldering iron, and everything should get soldered pretty good that way. So I'm just gonna time lapse this, speed up through it, and I'll be back with you guys when I'm done. Alright guys, so that's that. That's what she looks like with the pads popped off. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and I will use my desolder wick and get in there and try to remove all that solder. Now I just want to get those pads retinned, just a very small amount of solder on those. I'm actually just going to tin the tip of my soldering iron and we'll apply it that way. So, make sure cleaned up all along the edges of these switches that I'm not doing anything with. Get those to dry. And clean the tip of my iron. And I'll start retinning the pads here. Just put a little bit of flux on each pad. Not a whole lot, because the more we put down, the more we're gonna have to clean up. So just a very little bit. There we go. That will do it. And now, just gonna go ahead and tin the tip of my soldering iron here. Might actually have to change the tip on my soldering iron because this point isn't it's not one to hold the solder quite well. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and I'll be right back. Alright guys, I got that tip swapped out now. That should make it a whole lot easier to go ahead and tin these pads up. So I'm just going to go ahead and tin my tip here, and then I'll start applying solder. Alright guys, so now I got those pads nice and tinned. Kind of hard to see because all my light's over here, but got those pads nice and tinned. So now I'm going to go ahead and clean that area up with my alcohol. I'm going to do the same deal as before. I'm just going to apply a little to a Q-tip and really clean that area. All right, so now we got that area nice and clean. And now we just have to go about getting our new buttons on there. These little guys. All right, those are the new ones. Just make sure we don't get them separated with the, or mix up with the old ones rather. Just wanted to kind of do a visual inspection, make sure they're the same size and everything. Everything seems to be checking out looks wise there, so should be good. All right, so now I'm just gonna go back through and repeat the process that I did with taking them off. Just have to make sure they are oriented in the correct direction, and everything should work out good. All right, so got the first button on there. I did the first one off camera just to, once again, I didn't really look into any of this, so I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do it. Basically the way I did it was I held the pad down with my tweezers and went around and touched all four corners and made sure I had good connection there and made sure I was pretty centered up, which I am pretty centered up, so that looks pretty good. So I'll do the next one here and I'll just speed it up. So I think we're all good. Just gonna clean the area up, and then we'll start throwing the Game Boy back together. Alright, now let's get this thing thrown back together and cross our fingers that it works. So we'll go ahead and just reassemble it the exact same way that we took it apart. Wait. Yeah. Alright, now before I throw any of these back case screws in, I am just going to throw the battery and the game cartridge in there just so it'll hold everything together, and can just test to make sure that it works. Alright, you can already see our up arrow is much more responsive. And I don't know if we... Alright guys, I'm just going to go ahead and throw the screws back in this thing, and should be all wrapped up with this one. So now we can just go ahead, throw all these back case screws in, just using the 3-pronged bit again. Silver guys go one in the bottom of the game cartridge area and one in the battery compartment. And then our other 4 screws here around the perimeter. And that's going to be a wrap for this one, guys. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed me fixing my older brother's Game Boy from when he was a kid so that I can repurpose it as a gift for his kid coming up this next weekend. Like I said in the beginning of the video, is that, you know, I've only posted videos working on cars before this, but like just repairing electronics and working on electronics and stuff like that is something else that I enjoy. So I would like to do that from time to time whenever I come across an electronic project that I want to work on, and I would like to, show you guys what I'm working on. So thanks for watching, guys, and until next time.